cooking in the kitchen. Lord, baby Jesus, this is about to be a good one.
Oh yeah. Oh, what's up, man? So hope everybody's enjoying their quarantine out there. I know I am. There's nothing, anybody who's seen The Shining knows that there is nothing wrong with being locked up in your house with your family for extended period of time. But be that as it may, yes, today, man, pretty big controversial article just dropped about AOC, about her breaking with Bernie on how to lead the Democratic Party into the future. So we got to talk about it. Cenk Uger's getting roasted on Twitter for his take on it. So I wanted to see if we could jump in there and give our own takes and see if we can't put this into perspective a little bit.
Absolutely. So, as most of you already know, AOC got her stripes by running against Joe Crowley in Queens and the Bronx, and she actually beat Joe Crowley, despite the fact that Joe Crowley had really the entire political establishment bought off in Queens. Now, she rose quickly to stardom, became edified because she said she was a democratic socialist who was inspired by Bernie Sanders. Now, she had a few missteps in the beginning after she got her rhetoric together and was able to kind of pitch herself as a tried and true progressive. She kind of went back. She definitely reneged on some of the things that she had previously supported. For example, she had ran on supporting Tulsi Gabbard's All Fossil Fuels Act, which everybody at this point should know is the most progressive climate change legislation in the history of the world, like quite literally. That's why she supported it. Ilana Marsh supported, et cetera, et cetera. Now, of course, we know she reneged on that, decided to introduce the Green New Deal instead, and the Green New Deal turned out to be a resolution that didn't deal with nuclear power, didn't deal with fracking. I mean, there was a lot of major holes there, and she really hasn't seemed to put any serious bill like that, at least referencing that to the floor ever since she's introduced that. When you're looking at any piece of legislation on the progressive slate, AOC has maybe co-signed someone else's work, but she really hasn't put anything, just foundationally and structurally, different than what we have seen as of late from most of the establishment. And so now there have been a lot of questions. AOC endorsed Bernie, but it was 10 months into the election. She had already propped up Elizabeth Warren, who is Bernie's biggest threat, not necessarily his biggest competitor, but his biggest threat to take votes away. And people kind of forgave her for everything that she did prior, kind of forgetting what she had done. Really, I don't think they remember because they were just so excited about the Bernie thing. But then you hear rumors and murmurs about, well, she was on the campaign trail and it sounded like she was campaigning more for herself. She gave an entire speech for Bernie Sanders that didn't mention Bernie's name one single time. She was asked to campaign in certain places and she didn't show up. She wasn't at the LA rally, which is insane. I mean, Dick Van Dyke was there. I don't understand why AOC wouldn't be there. And you're starting to see a little pattern here. She erases Tulsi Gabbard as she props up Julian Castro, Cory Booker, and other neoliberals. And now we've gotten to a crossroad. And this is very shortly after she's called Nancy Pelosi Mama Bear. Rob, can you read some of the highlights of this article so we can talk about them?
Absolutely. So basically, the article starts out giving a bit of background on AOC, but the meat of it starts about right here, 2 paragraphs in. So, of the half dozen incumbent primary challengers that the Justice Democrats are backing this cycle, Ocasio-Cortez has endorsed just 2. Neither was a particularly risky move. Both candidates, Jessica Cisneros in Texas and Marie Newman in Illinois, were taking on conservative Democrats who oppose abortion rights and later earned the support of several prominent national Democrats. Ocasio-Cortez's reluctance marks a break with the outsider tactics of the activist left, represented by groups like Justice Democrats. This election cycle, the organization is trying to boot not just conservative Democrats, but also some liberal Democrats, and to replace them with members who are more left-wing. In other words, to replicate what it pulled off against Representative Joe Crowley in 2018 by recruiting Ocasio-Cortez. So, to me, that's basically saying, hey, so if I'm not mistaken, she was, all in for Justice Democrats nominees in 2018, and this year she can't even barely be bothered to show up. So, what's your take on that, Niko?
Man, well, let's talk about Jessica Cisneros F, like just from the jump, right?
Yep.
Yeah, she may be a Justice Democrat. I'm not sure if Justice Democrats have changed their platform, but one of the main things that they're supposed to, avoid doing is taking corporate money. That's one of the main things about being a Justice Democrat. Now, Jessica Cisneros is not that Democrat. She does take corporate money. Fiorella has actually done an expose on this particular person. She's pretending to be Latina. She's actually from Ohio, but she's actually literally pretending to be Latina. Like I said, Fiorella did a great video about that. She is running, for those of you who do not know, against Sema Hernandez. So this endorsement was actually a bigger deal because AOC actually knew who Sema Hernandez was, and she knows who she is. She knows that there's a progressive in the race that is actually doing very well, even compared to the neoliberal who has the backing of the establishment. And they're running for Senate, by the way. So this is a big deal.
Huge deal.
When AOC had that opportunity to endorse Sema, despite the fact that I think Nina had actually no Nina endorsed her, and then right after that, AOC endorsed Sema's opponent instead. So this pattern, you could kind of see what was happening if you've been paying attention. It looked like this was almost a foregone conclusion if you've looked at the pattern of behavior she's been following since maybe mid 2019.
Oh yeah. Well, look. I mean, my opinion on AOC is a little bit more harsh than a lot of other people's might be. I've always looked at her as, um, all bark, no bite. Maybe that's unfair, but I mean, to be honest with you, it seems like she enjoys being part of the show, right? It doesn't really
Yeah.
seem to me like she's really all that interested in, backing up what it is she's talking about. She just wants to continue talking. And, to your point about Cisneros, the same can be said about her support for Marie Newman. So what the article doesn't mention about her support for Newman is that Newman was running against an incumbent named Dan Lipinski, who for years has been one of the most conservative Democrats in Congress. Now, the article might mention
Mm.
that, but what it doesn't mention is that Marie Newman is far from a progressive by any means, because she takes hella money from billionaires. I mean, I'm sorry, it's always been kind of difficult for me to wrap my head around the fact that okay, so if you're a progressive, yeah, you might have one, maybe a couple of billionaires donating to you, right? Uh, just math,
It's
but
usually one or two like
one or
really
two.
random, like quirky billionaires.
Exactly. But you're not going to get Soros is not going to jump on board. Donald Sussman is not going to jump on board
Mm-hmm.
for a typical progressive. And whenever you pull up Marie Newman's FEC records, those are going to just be a couple of the big dollar names that are going to pop up on there. So to see AOC kind of jump in line with that class and saying, hey, you know what? I think that this is the right choice. I mean, look, I would have the Nancy Pelosi thing. Remember when that quote she said that you could have stuck a piece of D next to like it was a stump of wood,
Yeah.
right? You could have literally done that in Illinois and probably beat Lipinski. So her endorsement her endorsement of Newman was not groundbreaking in the least, and it was actually very safe, but it was actually disconcerting because it's kind of like, aren't you supposed to be
Why?
promoting progressives? Are you just
Mm,
I mean, isn't that what you're supposed to be doing? I mean, considering all the rhetoric you spew on a day in and day in, whatever,
well,
but
we've been saying for a while that it looked like she was riding Bernie's train. Let me get to the super chat real quick before I go on
go for it.
my tangent. Mr. Broken Ass, thank you very much for the super chat. This is a historical trend with AOC at this point. She's willing refuse to support Tim Canova, Chelsea Manning, and Kenneth Mejia. Yeah, what's crazy about the Tim Canova thing? Her and Tim are actually friends at one point. Um, that's what's crazy about that. Yeah, she refused to back Kenneth Mejia, despite I remember his campaign getting in contact. And he was running against a neoliberal and a conservative. So, but yeah, appreciate that super chat.
Sure.
So there's another part of the article where it actually talks about this shift that she's been showing, not only out in the public and with her endorsements, but also in her staff. It says Ocasio-Cortez's shift coincides with turnover among top aides in her congressional office, replacing some outspoken radicals with more traditional political professionals, along with the broader reckoning on the left on how to expand Sanders' coalition after his failure significantly to do so in the Democratic primary. Some progressives have questioned whether Sanders should have softened his anti establishment rhetoric and tried to build bridges with mainstream Democrats who voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016, rather than betting big on turning out disaffected and first time voters. Man, there is so much wrong with that paragraph that we have to engage. First, let's just talk about the obvious. There actually was a pretty significant turnover in Ocasio Cortez's office, and I don't know if y'all remember, but me and Fiorella actually covered it. It was when Chakrabarti, uh, they say he, just he wasn't fired. At least that's not what was said. But me and Fiorella said this is either a really good thing or a really bad thing, and I guess we'll see a few months, after he's been gone. And if you've noticed, since he's been gone, she has gotten more and more neoliberal, less and less critical of Nancy Pelosi. In fact, she's gone from being critical of Nancy Pelosi to calling her mama bear.
Mm.
Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer were working on this bill together, and as most of us found out through the Matt Stoller interview on Jimmy Dore, um, she's known about this for 2 weeks that this bailout was coming, and she built no coalition to challenge it. So you're like I said, you're starting to see this pattern that does definitely coincide not just with her, not just with her silence and refusal to challenge the power structures in the Democratic Party, not just with her lack of endorsements, but also it's beginning to translate the policies, bro. It's beginning to translate the policies as well. And so it does
Oh,
all coincide with them leaving or her transitioning into a more neoliberal centrist type of staff. Go ahead.
uh, for sure. Yeah. So it's interesting that you bring up the bailout. I'm going to try my hardest to not harp on that too much, but it's kind of, I mean, that's where we're at now. And you hit it right on the head. If she really, really wanted to push a progressive agenda, she would have most definitely had a major issue with this stimulus package and would have tried to form some kind of coalition in order to amend it at the very
Mm-mm.
least.
But
This
instead, she throws a hissy fit like he's going to fix something.
Yes, exactly. What does she do? She wants to get in front of cameras and get on the internet and start running her mouth, but she doesn't actually want to go do the work to get this thing fixed. I mean, what just happened with this bailout was one of the biggest robberies in the history of this country. And I mean, you want to talk about the phrase getting screwed with your pants on. Uh,
Yeah.
that's what happened to the American people over the weekend. And everybody just said, or not everybody, but a lot of people just said, thank you. So I mean, it's kind of gross to be honest with you. But yeah, I mean, whenever you're heaping praise on, when you're heaping praise on Nancy Pelosi, it's kind of giving me the same vibe as a Bernie Sanders saying that Joe Biden is his friend, every
But
chance
it's
that he gets.
worse because
Oh yeah.
AOC does it unprompted. Like, Bernie, although it's a bad strategy, he believes there's going to be some type of significant payoff at the end as long as he capitulates in some, in some capacity, like trying to ingratiate himself, by being cordial. And yeah, it's strategy. He thinks there's a means to an end. With AOC, she just unprompted. Yeah, we love Nancy Pelosi, and it's crazy because the thing that I've always noticed about AOC is she only wants to call out the establishment and respond to Nancy Pelosi specifically if she feels personally attacked. Then all of a sudden, it's women of color. This you always want to attack women of color, but like whenever Elon was under attack by the Democratic establishment, they were silent. Whenever even Rashida has been under attack, AOC's been silent. What happened whenever Nina was getting bombarded all election long after AOC endorsed Bernie and was on the campaign literally side by side with Nina? She will go out of her way to defend Elon, from little hecklers, Republicans specifically hecklers here and there, but never Nina Turner or Bree Joy Gray, never. So her allegiances all seem to be a means to an end for whatever personal agenda she has. It's very disconcerting if this is true, if this article's reporting is true, that she started this pack as it was some like our revolution type of deal, and apparently they're about to start taking corporate money. That's what Politico is reporting, and she hasn't denied it yet. And
Well,
if you couple that, if this PAC is taking corporate money and you're refusing to back progressive challengers who won't take corporate money because those corporations who spend that corporate money on your PAC don't want those progressive challengers who don't take corporate money to run against Democrats who do take corporate money, then that's probably problematic. I hope y'all
for
can
sure.
follow along with all that, but it's a problem.
Yeah. I mean, look, and this kind of goes back to what I've been saying about AOC from like almost the very beginning, and God forbid you talk shit about AOC because you're gonna get people start breathing down your neck about it. But quite honestly, like, let's be for real, she's a much better politician than everybody gives her credit for. She knows what the popular thing to do is. She knows her
Yeah.
base, right? She knows that they're gonna yes queen her all the way to the finish line. Just like Nancy Pelosi. She honestly, it's just like Nancy Pelosi to me, just in a different, I guess, a wolf in sheep's clothing type deal, right? Yeah, sure, okay. So she's come out and she's backed the Green New Deal, blah blah blah. I mean, good for you. I mean, honestly, that's something that you should be doing. That's not something that I'm going to give you a million pats on the back for, as somebody that claims to be a progressive. I mean, honestly, that's your job, is to
Mm-hmm.
fight for legislation like that. Even though you did turn your back on the off act. I mean, regardless, the GND is more of a business model than anything else. Uh,
If even.
Again, yeah, well, I mean, and this is obviously a discussion for another day. But I mean, when it comes to the Green New Deal, I mean, there's a lot of corporate interests in that. And
Yeah.
it's not just, hey, we're gonna kill the fossil fuel industry. I mean, what it is it's something for these companies are interested in this because they see it as a money making opportunity. And as long as money is flowing through Washington D.C., people are gonna stump for it. But whenever you're calling Nancy Pelosi Mama Bear and you're kissing up to like quite possibly one of the worst and most corrupt congresswoman that's definitely ever held title Speaker of the House since Newt Gingrich. Um,
Yeah.
you know, it's definitely concerning, and the fact that we keep giving her all this credit as some like progressive savant, as like she's the future. Like they're already setting her up for a 2028 run, right?
No,
Um,
2024.
20. Well,
She'll
should be
be
old enough. Should be 35.
yeah, she'll be 35. She turns 35 the October before her inauguration would be.
I'll tell you what, if she's the future of the progressive party, there will be no progressive party in 2024. I'm gonna go ahead and put you
Yeah.
that right. Or the progressive left, right? Like she's honestly, to me, she's a she's a liability. I'll be like
She's
quite
a
honest with you.
problem. She's a
Quite
Warren type of figure that could really do some damage, who has already gotten much more traction, honestly, than Warren ever has before she's even really had a serious run. So she will be problematic if she runs and like say Tulsi Gabbard decides to run again. Although I would love to see Tulsi expose AOC, that would be fun.
it would
But
be
who
fun.
knows? I feel like by then, AOC would have done very similar damage to herself like Warren had done up until her presidential run, like not backing, like this is going to come back up. And it's a choice between Tulsi and AOC or whoever, and maybe another progressive tries to run. Maybe Marianne Williamson gives it another shot. Like it's going to come down to, okay, who are you? What does your history look like recently? When you knew that you were going to become president, you learn a lot about somebody when they decide they want to run for president. You either go to the left, like genuinely, or you start posturing yourself to be able to toe that line, like that establishment line and that progressive line. Warren, you could see her doing that. She was toeing that line. Yeah, she would back some of Bernie's legislation, but never do it publicly. But if you went back and look, most of her stuff that she signed through 2018, 2019, all of a sudden she's backing Bernie. But previously, the person who had backed most of Bernie's legislation in the Senate was actually Amy Klobuchar. So people will make that pivot. So you'll see her co-sponsor a lot of shit, but just like Warren, you won't see her do a goddamn thing herself, and that's
No,
pretty evident.
no. And see, one of the most concerning things for me about this article, uh, is the praise that she's getting from other Democratic operatives,
Yeah,
people that would have never, in their right mind, back any kind of progressive. And as a matter of fact, most of them, at least the two quoted in the article, spend as much time as humanly possible trying to poo-poo on the leading progressive in the race as often as they can. One of them being James Carville. He's quoted in the article as saying the Democratic Party is a party of coalitions, not a cult, which is funny considering a lot of their takes on Tulsi Gabbard, but we'll skip by that for the time being.
And the fact that the Democratic Party basically is a cult.
I
It's
mean,
basically a cult. Like when you, if you
um,
really want to,
there's this, that whole, there's Joe Biden and people saying that he did some stuff, but nobody's talking
mm-hmm.
about it. But we're
Flying to
not a cult.
pedophile islands on pedophile planes with pedophile ringleaders and
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Trump does it
doing
one
God
time.
knows what.
Don't get me started, Niko. Don't get me started on this shit right now.
You know what I'm saying?
That's a whole
Like
nother
doing
video,
God
bro.
knows what for who. Like, bro, you're kind of a cult. I'm just saying.
Just a little bit. Yes.
Just a little bit.
Yes.
It's not a whole lot of bit. But
there's a few on the outside looking in. But yeah, by and large, if you are an establishment, you're definitely on the cult side of things. He continues though by saying, quote, "I've observed her. I think she's really talented and she's really smart. Maybe she is. I don't speak for her, coming to the conclusion that she wants to be part of the coalition." That is James Carville saying that she's moving to the right.
Oh man, let's talk about that Neera Tanden.
Oh yeah,
Tanden quote.
This is the best part. This is the best part of the whole damn article, and we finna go off on this because you know how much I love me some Neera Tanden.
Right. Neera Tanden, president of the liberal think tank Center for American Progress. Most of you are familiar with that. A long-time Hillary Clinton aide. The only important part, called Ocasio-Cortez's shift a sign of leadership. Ooh, man. Yeah, there are some people on the left who thought that their views represented a strong majority, and the primary process has shown that voters diverge, that Sanders is winning a minority and a smaller minority than what he had 4 years ago. Tanden said, oh my God. So there's so much wrong here. So we're going to unpack for a second. First of all, if Neera Tanden says you are showing a sign of leadership, assume it is the opposite.
Yes.
It was a weak move.
Weak as hell.
It's crazy because it's this double speak, bro. It is Orwellian double speak. You're showing a sign of leadership by being a complete and total follower. Didn't you know? It means the same thing. It's literally double speak. And let's talk about this fact. And this is what we have talked about, and this is what we fear for quite some time, that this narrative was going to create a shift in how some progressives think about their politics. And that was always their goal, where she says that there are some people on the left who thought their views represented a strong majority, and the primary process has shown that voters diverge, that Sanders is winning a minority and a smaller minority than he had 4 years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a lie. That is a lie. There is no possible way you're going to convince me that we should take seriously the election, that every major state, all their exit polling is off. And then in those same states, the Republican exit polling matches perfectly. You're going to tell me I'm supposed to take seriously the results from states that were previously caucus based, that Bernie won. Then as soon as they go replace these various election, the way they hold their elections in different areas, they replace them with machines. So if it was a caucus, it's now a machine. Paper ballots, machine. A lot of these states, the machines, like South Carolina, and I even believe Texas, they don't have voter verified paper backups. In the United Nations says, if your election deviates from exit polling more than 2%, your election is not legitimate. We are seeing exit polling that is doubling not just a 2% of the result, but more than doubling the goddamn margin of error at 9%, bro. Are you kidding me? But AOC, which was interesting because at first she acknowledged voter suppression, but then what did she do? Oh no, Joe Biden, she won, or he won that fair and square. That's why he won. And so AOC being ignorant, and this is why I keep telling people, Fiorella said this yesterday, stop edifying people who have no experience in real world politics. I understand I call real world politics what you do locally. organizing locally, because all politics is local. And the knowledge, like if Tim Canova would have been in AOC's position, he would go into Congress with a completely different mindset. He knows where his movement would be the most effective. In other words, you don't give up your mandate because you know you only have one vote no matter what happens. So if you get a good piece of legislation, you only have one vote. There's a bad piece of legislation coming, and your one vote alone may not fix it. You can use your voice and that mandate as a progressive with the platform to then create a narrative and a culture in the media that demands these legislators not vote for something. That's what you have when you're a progressive, and somebody like Tim Canova would probably behave more like that, or Josh from Washington State, if he would have won. Like, that's what we need in Congress. But instead, you see this capitulation based off of a complete and total lie that Bernie somehow, all of his raw numbers, individual unique donations, the amount of phone calls and doors being knocked on, the amount of volunteers, all in the millions, fundraising in the hundreds of millions. Despite all of that, he is the only candidate in history where the results don't reflect pure dominance in every other category as far as elections are concerned. It's ludicrous.
Yeah, it is completely ludicrous. And you know what? I mean, honestly, from the jump, there was, I mean, with the Iowa caucuses, like the disaster that was. I mean, quite honestly, we saw that coming from a mile away. With the voter suppression that was going on there, and with the shadiness with the app, and just a complete breakdown of the democratic process. I'm sorry if I'm not really a huge fan of modern day electoral processes that include flipping a coin to decide who gets delegates, or drawing a high card in the case of Nevada. Like, this is what we're doing, for one. But second of all, this is something that I'm sure that Neera Tanden would dispute heavily, being the bastion of ethics that she is. I would say that the Democratic Party pulled a coup right before Super Tuesday. And I know people that watch my content are probably sick and tired of hearing me say this, but it's true, guys.
It's
When
true.
when you're strong arming viable candidates, or potentially viable candidates, out of the election before the electoral process has been able to take its natural course, that you're manipulating the election. With all the polls that were coming out after Super Tuesday talking about the vast majority of late breaking votes were going to Biden. The reason why that is because a lot of the people that were going to vote for Klobuchar and Buttigieg, their candidate dropped out right at the last second. And do you think that a Buttigieg or a Klobuchar voter is going to jump on Bernie's bandwagon? Probably 7 out of 10 are not going to. That basically, and the only reason why they dropped out, like, honestly, it was just look. I've gone on this rant a million times. I'm not going to rebeat this horse to death, but I mean, quite honestly, this election this primary season was just a joke, a complete joke. Like, we thought it was going
Yeah.
to be a little bit
And
more
no
interesting.
progressive should use the results as some type of reflection on how you should pivot to the center, because that's what those results show. These results are not legitimate. Like, they're not, like, by definition, they are not legitimate. We are there is an attempt to legitimize illegitimate results that in any other country would not stand. But in the coin flip democracy, of course these results are legitimate. And that's what they're going to continue to repeat. But we have to then be willing to challenge them and say, no, bullshit. The problem is not you can't tell me people don't want that Medicare for all. No, 70% of the country likes it, but that 30% really showed up to the polls. Bro, come on. Or this idea that young people don't show up to the polls, right? Oh, no, they don't show up. You mean except for those hundreds and hundreds of people who are waiting outside in line?
Exactly. For
You
hours
know what I'm saying?
and
Or those
hours.
hundreds of thousands of provisional ballots in California. We don't know where the fuck they went. Like, these people are showing up to the polls. The people are not having their voices heard, or they're being erased. That's what's happening.
But people, we need to realize something. And it's very, I've seen varying opinions, and this is probably gonna get me in hot water, but I really don't give a fuck. Be quite honest with you. The thing is that we have to recognize that by and large, the squad is a hashtag.
Yeah.
and that AOC is not the future of anything progressive. If she is what we're looking forward as a progressive in the future, then there is
We're
no future for
screwed.
progressive. I mean, exactly. I cannot stress this enough. She is to the right of Bernie Sanders. Please don't let anybody ever tell you that AOC is moving to the
It's
left of
true.
Bernie Sanders. It's no way. There's no, I mean, and it blows my mind.
People
No,
forget, I don't want to interrupt, but we can't
no,
forget
go for
this
it.
fact. Bernie Sanders did not sign or vote for the Green New Deal in the Senate. People attack Tulsi for this, but people always forget Bernie didn't either. And there was a reason for it. And guess what? That reason was the exact same reason Tulsi didn't. It did not go far enough. And AOC was okay with it not going far enough. And Bernie's he took the branding, and that's kind of what he does at this point. But he took that branding, he amplified it, and so people were kind of conflating Bernie's Green New Deal with what AOC was advocating for. And in fact, his plan, excuse me, was far superior in every way compared to AOC's. Not quite as good, in my opinion, as the OFAC, but still far superior to AOC's. But so we have to kind of, if we are observing history objectively, I feel like the truth about AOC is pretty evident at this point.
There's an interesting part about this article here. You mentioned Chakrabarti, right?
Yes.
So also in August, and communications director Corbin Trent left earlier this month. So earlier this month, her
Mm.
communications director Corbin Trent
Whoa,
left.
really?
It says here some associates of Ocasio-Cortez thought Trent was hurting her by calling for tactics they felt were politically foolhardy. One ally recalled Trent wanted Ocasio-Cortez to go beyond, quote, Medicare for all and embrace a fully nationalized healthcare system like the United Kingdom's in an attempt to further stretch the boundaries of the debate.
What? Actually, the Medicare for all they were supporting was closer to the UK.
And Trent's defenders in the progressive world believe his willingness to make enemies and indifference to what Pelosi thought helped push ideas like the Green New Deal into the mainstream. That's exactly correct.
Hey, breaking
I'm
news! Breaking news! Justin Jackson from the LA Chargers said, AOC, if Narratanen is praising you, you're doing something wrong. Change course.
Absolutely. Fuck yeah, hell yeah, you're
Oh,
doing something wrong. But I mean, to be honest with you, that paragraph about her former communications director, um, Trent's defenders in the progressive world believe his willingness to make enemies and indifference to what Pelosi thought helped push ideas like Green New Deal into the mainstream. Um, and of course, the people that were her quote unquote allies said that that exact thing was hurting her by calling for
mm-hmm.
tactics they felt were quote politically foolhardy. Um, I'm sorry, guys, but whenever it comes down, you're never going to get what you want from the establishment by giving them all, by
Yeah.
playing
Also,
for their team. Like,
you shouldn't operate from the center and then think that you're going to get more of what you want. Like
you're just
you go. I do agree with them. I agree with her communication director. How do you get the Medicare for all that we're asking for? By going further left, like what Australia or Japan or Denmark has. Denmark has probably one of the most exclusive, like governmentally exclusive uh, healthcare systems. But like that's how you get it. You got to go left. You don't go to the center and be like, man, I really hope I have some type of strategic advantage here. Like, no, that never happens in politics. You never get everything you want unless you're the president. You got executive order power.
well, I mean, of
Uh,
course.
we got a super chat from Marcus Will. Thank you very much for the super chat, Marcus. Bernie Sanders' campaign went from challenging the New Hampshire results to being completely silent throughout the rest of the election. Was there a purge after New Hampshire? A purge in what? I'm not sure what way you mean if there's a purge, but I do 100% believe there's a voter registration purge. That's what you're
Well,
referring to.
well, I mean, look,
Um,
when it comes to the post mortem of the what Bernie did right, what Bernie did wrong, I mean, that's probably it's going to be its own video in and of
yeah,
itself. Yeah,
that's a
but
whole different
I
thing.
mean, he,
But yeah, man, I want to wrap up. You got
yep.
anything to say before we head out?
Not really, man. I just want people to understand that the fight that the progressive left is undertaking right now is definitely against the James Carvilles and the Nancy Pelosi's and the Neera Tandons of the world. And by shaking their hand and patting them on the back and getting their approval is, not, it's like the opposite of what you want. You have to be willing to make enemies. You have to be willing to fight the unpopular fights. You have to be willing to make the unpopular opinion. Um, to me, AOC has been moving to the right ever since she got elected.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the establishment's willingness to prop her up is almost to me, that's the biggest red flag that you could possibly
She gets almost
imagine.
exclusively positive media coverage from the liberal media. Even
Absolutely.
this, even this article, they're like, oh, they're trying to sabotage her. No, actually, if you read the tone of this article, it's praising her for being wise enough to make a centrist type of shift. That's what it
Well,
sounds like when I read it.
well, to me, when I read it, it was, I mean, what's wrong with reporting the actual fact? I mean, these are all factual things that they're saying in this article. I mean, a lot of people are trying to
Yeah, I
shit
don't
on
even think it's
Politico for
opinion.
this, but I don't see how, I don't see how basically pointing out the fact that she's not promoting Justice Democrats except for the neoliberal
That's a
ones that,
story.
I mean, that's true though. I mean, it's all true. I mean, she is moving to the right, and her actions prove it. So, I mean, people, the AOC fan club and this hashtag squad members can get as pissed off as they want about it. It doesn't change the fact that your girl isn't the progressive warrior that everybody thinks she is. In fact, she's going to wind up in the end of and when it's all said and done, she's going to wind up just a hair to the left of Nancy Pelosi, and I'm sorry, that's not good enough.
Man, this is crazy. All kinds of Justice Democrat news. So Josh for Congress just put this out before we head out. Um, Cenk Uygur held a meeting to scold TYT workers for trying to unionize,
I read that.
saying they can't afford for the workers to unionize. At the meeting, Cenk angrily yelled at a worker for smiling, saying it'd be really funny later. The morning after Cenk lost his election, he fired that worker.
Ooh, I see. I didn't hear that part.
Ooh.
I didn't hear that part. I read the article about the unionization thing.
Man, this is getting crazy, bro. What the
Well, yeah,
fuck?
it was really gonna be hard to.
Egos is colliding.
We can't afford to unionize, even though I just got $20 million from Hillary Clinton's sugar daddy. But yeah, fuck
That I
it,
don't
man.
understand what he thought was coming with that. Like this is what comes when you do this type of stuff. But I think that they're paying themselves too much. I always thought that Anna and Jank were paying themselves way more than what they're actually worth. Like
Hey,
Jank is paying himself in two capacities, I think, at one point. And I believe Anna was probably paying herself in two capacities as well. Cause I think they're the only like actual millionaires on the network still
yeah.
after
I mean,
all these years.
they did this to themselves, man. I mean, me and you specifically, I know, have been trying to warn people about TYT now for a hot minute. They are not who they say they are. And their actions prove it. It's just the people are just being, a lot of people are just willingly ignorant to what they're being
Hey
told and what they're
man,
being
and
shown.
whoever stayed at TYT, like after getting I don't let it. I don't want to tell people not to work, but all I'm saying is if you stayed after and you were in that room and you heard that and you didn't challenge Jank on it at all, I'm not. I don't know what goes on behind closed doors, but if you didn't challenge Jank or you just like stayed at TYT, keeping quiet, like that's fucked up, bro. That's the opposite of how unions are supposed to work. You're supposed
Yeah.
to show solidarity with that worker. That's when you and everybody who wants to be in the fucking union leave work. That's that moment where the union is supposed to come together.
Yeah, and you know what?
Just saying.
As far as Jank goes, shame on you, bro.
Yeah,
Because
that's a
honestly,
goddamn
like,
shame.
I mean, I don't see how you can look your audience in the eye and call yourself a progressive when you constantly back off of your own rhetoric. That's why I'm surprised that him and AOC aren't best friends, because they're almost exactly alike when it comes down
Shit,
to
he
it.
does. He loves praising
He'll probably
AOC.
be her
But
campaign
usually
manager in
whenever she
2024.
oh, yeah, if she wants to lose, Jank is not really good when it comes to strategy or anything like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just look, man. This is sad. It is really getting sad. Not really because it was unexpected for us. I think we've been saying this for quite some time, but it's sad how many people believed in figureheads like this,
Yeah.
gatekeepers. And
And legitimately,
my worry isn't, yeah, you know what I'm saying? My worry isn't like, I don't give a fuck about what happens to AOC personally or Jank. My worry is how people will be affected, how their motivation will be affected after seeing so many people fall. But this goes back to what I've always said. We need a leftist movement that is once again focused but decentralized. The figureheads, we should not be elevating people who have been privileged enough to be put in powerful positions. That's different. Like Martin Luther King didn't have no official title. He was, a doctor and a reverend, but like he was never an elected official. He stepped outside of his, normal practices to fight for a cause greater than himself or his personal profession. That is what we need more of. Once again, rather than edifying these politicians who are getting checks of 200,000 or six figures every year. So before we go, let me read a couple of these super chats. Young Taro or Young Naro, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the super chat. And Donald Smith, do you know futures plan or Tulsi's futures plans? I do not. I'm not even going to pretend to know. I know her future plans immediately, and that is she's going to continue to introduce legislation to combat the conditions of the coronavirus. So, with that being said, appreciate you coming on and talking about that, Rob. And for everybody else, make sure you follow us on rockfin.com, subscribe, like, share the video, but always remember more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.